Are you ready to branch out, to take a leap of faith, to love yourself and others fully? Then let go of whatever no longer serves you to take action now on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Erica will energize and excite you to power up your passionate dream that sets your soul on fire. With Erica's E3 approach, equipping, empowering, and enlightening yourself so you can be yourself for yourself. Get ready and get rooted to live a life without regrets, without what ifs, without should haves, and especially without empty feelings from a life unexplored. This hit show helps you build powerful and intentional roots to live it up, love it up, and let it go. Get fearlessly ready and powerfully rooted in your yes with your host, Erica Gifford Mills, and be fearless about your more and stand in your yes. Now on Get Rooted Radio.
Welcome, everyone. I am Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go, right here on Transformation Talk Radio. A big shout out, as always, to my producer today, Nat. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Erica. I am a little sad, though, that the groundhog, Puxatawny Phil, saw his shadow yesterday. So more weeks of winter.
I know, and I think we could all agree that we need the sunshine, we need the warmth. So I'm in Wisconsin, so is my guest today, as well as you're out in Seattle. So I don't know why we live where we don't have more sun. But today's episode is titled Your Story Matters. And my guest, Wendy Babcock, and I will explore the power of storytelling for female entrepreneurs and how sharing your story can elevate visibility and create authentic connections. And who does not want authentic connections? We will discuss overcoming fears of oversharing and crafting stories that inspire and influence. And you will learn actionable tips to make your story the foundation of your impact, because remember, listeners, all of our stories matter. But first, a bit about my guest. Wendy Babcock is an international and TEDx speaker, author, and the paid stage speaker coach dedicated to helping entrepreneurs amplify their voices to get on more stages and get paid to speak. With over 7+ years of experience on paid stages, Wendy has guided clients to secure substantial speaking fees and elevate their professional profiles. As the creator and host of Win Stories, Wendy knows that visibility is crucial for speakers and entrepreneurs. Win Stories utilizes a branded stage, a book, and a podcast to enhance speakers' assets and expand their reach. Wendy's mission is to illuminate transformative stories and empower both aspiring and established speakers to create a powerful impact and establish themselves as the thought leaders that they already are. Thank you so much, Wendy, for being on the show today.
Thank you, Erica, for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
Well, and I'm excited because I'm going to be in your next Win series. And I didn't mention the Win Stories in my intro. And what we want to talk about during this first segment is that why behind the win. So can you share your inspiration behind Win Stories?
Yeah, so Win Stories came about as I was working with my clients. So I work with entrepreneurs, coaches, and speakers to get on either paid stages or just get on stage. And I would ask them questions. You know, we as entrepreneurs, we're asked a lot, what's your why? And I was asking them, what is your when? Meaning, what is that when moment in time when everything changed in your life? Because what I was finding is, as we were crafting their talks, it was coming down to that when moment when everything changed for them. And it was why they're doing what they're doing now. So the when led to the why. And I thought, wow, this is kind of something I've never heard of, people tackling the when moments. And so that's kind of how the idea was born, was just, you know, going back to when everything changed for people to help them develop stories and develop their talks.
And I think that's important because sometimes we fall into things and we don't know why, but it's like you said, because that win, it was that pivotal point. And why is that storytelling particularly important for female entrepreneurs to better explain their positions?
So women work differently. when we network, when we're talking on stage, we relate to one another so much differently. We're not as transactional as, I'm generalizing it, but as men, right? Men are easy
Yes.
about the sale, about the ask. Women want to know each other. We really want to build that know, like, and trust, and because we want authentic connections. We want to spend our money with people who we really like. I mean, let's face it, you might know 10 marketing coaches, but when you go to spend your money, it's with the person who you know, like, and trust. And that's where storytelling comes in. When we share more personal aspects of our lives, the whys and the whens, that builds trust and it builds that relatability and authenticity that the person on the other side of that conversation is really looking for. This way they feel like they really know you and they're more apt to spend their money with you then.
And it goes back to that authentic connection, because it's true. Like we want to have a personal experience. And when I say we, yes, again, generalization, but many women, they want to have that personal connection when they're engaging in work, whatever work that might be, even shopping. I think that's why a lot of times the small mom and pop shops or the individually owned, women owned businesses, because we do want to lift each other up and we do want to have that connection. And so that storytelling, I completely agree. It helps, right? You get that personal connection, which then leads to that authentic relationship.
Right. And we can throw facts out there. Someone could say to you, I'm a 6-7 figure earner and I've helped X amount of people. That's great. Those are facts. But when you tell the story behind how you got there, that's what really brings people into your circle and your story.
So with that, what does that name Win Stories signify? And if you say female entrepreneurs, like, who is it for?
Right. So for When Stories, you mean the actual, like, what When Stories is? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So When Stories. So this came about for a couple different reasons. Is, again, I work with a lot of speakers and they kept saying things like, boy, I really want to get a TEDx. I want to get on that TEDx stage. And I would ask them, why? What is it about the TEDx? Do you have a really great idea worth sharing? Because that's what TEDx is. They're like, well, not really. But man, if I just got on that stage, people would really see me and think I'm important. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. I'm like, I wish there was a stage just for storytelling. And that was the other aspect, is the people I work with really do have these incredible stories. They come from places that I can't even imagine with some of the stories. And then you and I have talked as well, Erica, about your story behind the scenes that some people know and some people might not know. But that's what was so fascinating. I'm like, I wish there was a TEDx stage just for storytelling. And that's when I'm like, well, I love putting on events. Why don't I just create this? Right? I work with speakers. I know what I want as far as visibility and what people look for to make you look like an expert or the authority on whatever it is you speak on. And so I started thinking about what are those visibility pieces that people really want. And I found it was the TEDx stages. It was a book, but speakers aren't always authors. And so I found that they don't want to write a whole book or don't think they have enough to write a book. So that made me think of anthologies. And then, of course, podcasts, being on any type of shows, right? That usually there's great SEO. Someone could search your name and find you on Spotify or wherever else. And plus, it just helps you show up as an expert. And so I kind of put those different things together and I created When Stories around those when moments when everything changed as a kind of an ultimate visibility package for speakers and entrepreneurs.
I like how because a lot of people think, because they're so used to seeing, the TED Talks, the TEDx Talks, that they are like, that's my stage. That's where I want to be. And without a true understanding of really what those stages are for and how you get there and what are you hoping to do with it. And I think that what you've created is perfect for those female entrepreneurs who are looking to promote themselves, to build themselves. And that's what I think is not always available, right? When we're talking about the TED Talks and the TEDx Talks. So it's good to understand and research to understand what do I really want, right? What's really going to happen out there.
and understanding what the platform is. So I've done a TEDx. It's a wonderful platform about ideas worth sharing, but they are not positioned where they want you to use it for promotion. It's about the ideas worth sharing. You don't have to be a speaker to do a TEDx. In fact, they're kind of cutting down on bringing professional speakers and coaches in, and it's on their website. And so that was the other piece of it. Is like, okay, I want people to tell their stories, but I also want them to be able to use this to promote themselves, to take people on a journey between their story and where they are now.
Yeah. And I think that's great. So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about crafting your story. But before we go, Wendy, tell folks how they can connect with you.
Sure. They can just visit my website, wendybabcock.com, or find me on Facebook, social media, just under Wendy Babcock.
Great. And you also have some events coming up. Tell listeners about those and how they can join.
So I have the One Stories, of course, is onestories.com. And I've got an event called the Warrior Amplified. It's for female entrepreneurs in the Brookfield, Wisconsin area at warriorunchained.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You are listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any portion of today's episode, you can catch it on getrootedradio.com. Don't forget to subscribe online to receive the latest news, events, specials, and words of encouragement. Go to getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Wendy Babcock. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yep. Thank you, Erica.
So during the last segment, we discussed the why behind win stories. And during this segment, we are going to explore how to craft your story. And one, I'd say, why is that important before we get into the concerns about crafting your story?
So why you should craft a story? For one thing, if you're whether a speaker or if you're an entrepreneur, you're always going to be talking about your business. Right. So having it laid out in a way that makes sense, that, brings the listener into your story is really important. And as a speaker, you need to have a signature talk. So this is the thing that you are the expert in. And it's important because it sets you up as an expert. If I came on here and said, I'm an expert in 10 different things and gave you these different topics, you'd think, are you really an expert in those 10 different things? Or am I just an expert in one thing, but then I can have some other things I could speak on, but being known as that one expert, that's what you're really going for. That's why the signature talk is so important because, that's the jack of all trades thing and expert at none.
And so how can women share their stories? And again, as we talked about those authentic connections, so share their stories authentically without being concerned of oversharing or having that, trauma bonding or trauma dumping with others.
Really, the key to this is it's okay to share your story, whether it's, something really deep, something that you've experienced, and it's gauging it with who you're talking to. Some people like deep conversations, and you kind of know that, or surface level conversations. So you'll kind of know how deep to go with the story. But the biggest part of this is, so you're not trauma dumping on someone, is to bring it up to the lessons that you learned. You can go into the story behind who you are and what got you to where you are, but make sure that you're bringing them through the lessons of it. You did experience the thing, but here's what I learned from it, and here's why I do what I do. And so you have to bring them on that upward turn of the story so that you're not leaving them worse than what you found them. Because if you just tell them all the negative things that have happened, that leaves somebody feeling deflated, right? You've been around people like that. So you want to leave them on a high.
And you use literally WIN acronym to go through this. What is that example?
So, and actually I don't have it sitting in front of me, the WIN. So a lot of this is just about, when everything changed, how much to include in your story. And of course, I'm just offhand, I should have had this in front of me today. How much to include, how much not to include, and then what's next. Those are the basics of it, right? So you want to make sure that you're not overly dumping on. So sometimes when you're listening to somebody tell you a story, you know how they'll be starting the story, and they're like, oh yeah, but then my cousin did this. Oh, wait, let me back up, right? And they go off on all these little tangents. You don't want to do that. You want to stick to your main points and not go off on tangents. people don't need to know everything, right? So you have to ask the, who cares question as you're building your story. Like, you need your audience to say, well, who cares? Because then you know how much you need to add into your story. And then you lead them to the what now. What's the action steps that they need to take now? Like, so what now? So what? Who cares? And what's next? What now? What can I do now to improve my life?
Yeah, and I like that, because when you're looking at it, the W for the who cares, the H for the how much, the E for the easy to follow, right? We're not being going off the tangents, which I admit I can do. And then the N, the now what. And I believe you also have to look at the audience, right? Are you reading your audience and understanding your audience? Because there might be something that you do need to include to build that connection, to get that emotional connection, but at the same time, how is that relevant to where you're going?
Right.
And if you leave that out or you include too much, I didn't follow you.
Yeah, and there's like body language cues in the audience that you'll see when you're speaking at an audience. If people have their arms crossed, if they're looking off into the distance, you've lost them. If they're making eye contact, they're nodding their head, they're tilting their head to one direction or the other, they're actively listening. Or they lean forward in their chair when you make a point, you've got the audience. So you have to both understand your story, and as you're telling it, watch your audience for those nonverbal cues.
And that's important. I mean, let's be honest, that's important in life in general, right? Whether it's your storytelling, but also if you're in a business meeting, you got to be able to read that room and know, are you losing them, right? So it is really important to understand that. So what advice, now that we kind of know how do we share without oversharing, and what is the little acronym behind it, the who cares, the how much, the easy to follow, and now what is your advice for someone who doesn't think their story is grand enough, is big enough, that, who cares what happened to me? What is your advice for those women?
So this is going to sound kind of funny, but this is one aspect in life where size does not matter, right? So it doesn't, it literally, some people have those really deep, traumatic stories, right? They're just gut wrenching. You can't understand. Those are very powerful. But then there's also people who have stories that maybe aren't as deep and dark, but it's still your story. Size literally doesn't matter, because we all have so many different experiences on this earth that if we only experience deep dark, we'd always just go to those deep dark places. We need the lighter stories. We need the quote unquote smaller stories as well, because everything is a learning example. So if people that go back on your life and kind of mark all those different when moments, some are going to be a lot deeper than others. Some are going to be a little bit easier than others. They're all learning experiences, and there's teaching lessons out of those. So size does not matter. Every story does matter. So that's why I say size doesn't matter in storytelling. They're all relevant.
That is a very relevant point, because as we introduced it, as the title of today's episode is Your Story Matters.
Right.
Because everybody is different. Everybody reacts to things differently. It's based on our background, on our experience. And it's what lesson. I mean, because sometimes we know things, but until something happens and we have to implement something, we don't know, right? We think we know what we want to do or what we would do, but until you're in that scenario, how do you know? Because what are your life experiences up to that point? And I think understanding and learning from others' mistakes and their successes is important.
Yeah. I like to say it's a perspective spectrum, because we all hear stories from where we're at and through our own lenses. Yeah. And so one person's story about leaving a corporate job is speaking to someone who's in corporate. That might be a very powerful, moving story, because they're like, wow, that's where I want to go. How did you do it? Whereas somebody maybe who's never worked in corporate, it's not going to relate it's a different perspective. So that might be a big story to somebody else because they relate to it. So it's a spectrum, and it's a perspective of the listener and who you're telling the story to. So that's why there's really not a gauge of big story, small story, whether it's traumatic or business, different type of levels of stories.
And so on that same note, then I would say, if somebody doesn't know what their story can be, and they think, I don't really have anything that was horrible or traumatic or life-changing, what do I even talk about? So how do I craft my story? Where would you say they should start?
Honestly, a brainstorming session is really where I tell people to go to. And this is, again, this is around those when moments. Even if you haven't experienced anything really significant, but our lives always take a different path, even on small decision making. Whether you took one job or another, whether it could be who you're married to. Did you go through a divorce? Did you have a surgery? Did you, give birth? I mean, all of those things count. Those are all lessons along our lifeline. So I would tell someone to really sit down and brainstorm, go through like childhood, teenage years, 20s, depending on where they're at in their life, and think about the moments when your life took a different path. Even if it's not some big, crazy story, there's still those moments that are pivotal where we make decisions, where we have, two choices as a fork in the road, and think about those moments and then pull out the learning lessons from those. And that's where you're going to have those things that you can teach somebody else.
Great. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about storytelling strategies for stages and beyond. But before we go, Wendy, tell folks how they connect with you and learn more about your upcoming events.
Yep. So they can go right to wendybabcock.com or wenstories.com. And specifically, warriorunchained.com is my women's entrepreneur and business conference.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I am Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Don't forget to visit getrootedradio.com to listen to a replay of this episode, sign up for helpful tips, and learn about upcoming events. That's getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Wendy Babcock. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Erica. I'm excited to be here.
So during the last two segments, we talked about the why behind win stories and crafting your own story. And during this segment, I really want to get into talking about the storytelling strategies for stages and beyond. So in the first segment, you mentioned something about a signature talk. So why is a signature talk? Well, let me take a step back. What is a signature talk, and why then is a signature talk so essential for speakers and coaches?
So your signature talk is what you're known for. Right. So in the past, 7, almost 8, well, actually it is 8 years now, actually, just in January, 8 years, I've been speaking on a complaint-free world. I'm a certified complaint-free trainer through Will Bowen. And so that's my signature talk. So people who hire me to speak, they know that that's my topic. It's complaint-free business or complaint-free world. So a signature is the complaint-free message. Whereas if I talk on a bunch of other topics, I'm not known as that's a specific speaker on a specific topic. So that's the signature part of it. It makes you the expert. It makes it so you're easily recognized as that's who they want.
It goes back to the the jack of all trades, expert of none, as we talked about, right?
Exactly.
So you want to kind of, what is that? I know for me, I talk on a lot of different items, but it all leads back to boundary management. So the topic is the same, but it might go around to what are we doing for our boundaries? And I think that's essential so that people know, okay, it might not be the exact same talk because I want to go and see her and I want to see her again, but it's going to be something around boundary management based on my audience. And how does that elevate, right? If we're working with a signature talk and then tying in storytelling to it, how does that elevate a presentation or a keynote for those speakers?
Well, when you're giving a presentation, you want it to be engaging, educational, and entertaining, right? Because otherwise you're just basically giving a lecture. And what happened when you think of lecture, you automatically want to kind of close your eyes and take a little nap, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So bringing in storytelling makes it a lot more engaging. It makes it more entertaining, especially if you naturally have a good sense of humor and maybe can add in some kind of, just some humor into your presentation, keep things a little lively. But also the storytelling demonstrates what you're speaking about. So when you're teaching something, especially if you're using facts and figures, storytelling makes it 22 times more memorable than just those facts and figures alone. So memorability and makes it engaging and entertaining. And people just lean in and listen more. It's just so much more relatable than just, lecturing.
Yeah, as you said, the lecturing, or nobody likes to be talked at, right? We want to be talked to. We want to be engaged. And I think that you're absolutely right. When you have that storytelling aspect of it, it's not like you're sitting in an auditorium in, 11th grade science being talked at.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you're teaching something, especially if it's something complex, if you can break it down and utilize storytelling, it's just a demonstration. It's just thinking about what story would demonstrate this thing so that people are like, oh, okay, oh, now I get it. Like you told me what it was, but now you're showing them how it actually works and or demonstrating how they can implement something.
So along those same lines, we want to look at our presentation, our speech, our keynote, right, as a storytelling component. But what roles do the stories playing not only in creating that authenticity, but that credibility and trust with the audience?
Yeah, when you tell stories, it helps you share even a bit of yourself, even if you're not using personal stories. It still creates that know, like, and trust. I mean, there's something that happens with brain science, even when you're telling a story, your brains actually get on the same kind of brain waves. It's called neurocoupling, and it just makes people connect. And so there's that really relatable thing that happens when you're storytelling, that people truly do lean in, feel like they know you. And again, it doesn't even have to be a personal story. Some of the stories I use in Complaint Free has nothing to do with me personally. I may be talking about getting on an elevator and just making something a relatable scenario that people might have, recently done. You get on an elevator and then a stranger walks in and you're both standing there and you're watching, the numbers at the top of the elevator count down or count up. And it's really awkward until somebody complains, right? About the weather, about sports, about how long the elevator is taking, right? And people put themselves in that situation and automatically they're like, oh yeah, she gets it. I just did that this weekend at this conference I'm at, currently. And so it's just something for your audience to really relate to.
Yeah. Well, and as you said, it's the neuroscience behind it,
Right.
but it's also that emotional engagement and what isn't it one of the oldest forms? You think about it, that's how our history was passed down. That's how traditions were passed down, are those storytelling. And I would love when my dad would get into all of a sudden telling a story. I mean, we'd all sit there fascinated, like just our hands on our, chins going, yes. And then what? Even if we heard the story, 12 times already, we all wanted to hear it again because it was that fostering that community, the togetherness. But I think it also, when you're in a teaching moment, it has that influence on additional decision making, persuasion, and that psychological principles that follow that.
Yeah. And I think you touched on a really great point with talking about your father. With family, we probably, as you said, that people were thinking, oh, yeah, my sister's a really great storyteller. And sometimes you hear the stories over and over, but they never get boring because some people are just natural storytellers. My dad was the same way, right? And you feel like you're right there in the story, like you somehow lived it as well, right? It's that shared experience through storytelling. And again, it can be persuasive.
Well, and that keeping that, when you can get that empathy, I mean, I'm not trying to say we want to fool our audience by any ways, but like when we can have that empathy and that humanizing what you're doing makes it so much relatable that then it gets to, I saw this in a campaign. What's that? Doves campaign.
Oh yeah.
Right? They focused on some of those insecurities and societal pressures that women face. And then they told a story behind it and really just made them a champion of self-confidence, right? To say you can do that. And it does that. It builds that. And think what it can do for a national campaign, that it can do for you and your brand as an entrepreneur.
And that's so true. True. And even as speakers, I want everyone who's listening to think about, well, if you've gone somewhere and watched a speaker on stage, right? When somebody gets on stage, there's an elevation. You think that they're an expert. There's an authority there. And it's almost like they level up, even though they're still a human being. They're just like you and I, right? We're just people. And so you automatically see them as kind of this celebrity energy. That's just what happens when people get on a stage. But really, if we can tell stories, it brings us back down a little bit. So it's like, no, we're the same. We're just people, right? There's no elevation of anything. I'm just a human being sharing my experiences, trying to teach something. But it's just natural that that celebrity energy happens, but we're all just people.
And that's when we realize that, wow, this can happen to anybody, right?
Right.
This, right? Whatever the lesson is, when I say this,
Yeah.
whatever that lesson is. And you can take almost anything and learn from it, or at least we should. I mean, I know I never always learned my lessons the first time around. Sometimes it takes many. And I mean, and also you relearn as you change, as you grow, as your circumstances change. You do learn new things about the same lesson, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and I'll get into this in my story when we do win stories in March, is I thought I knew, and then I had to learn again. And then I had to learn again because the situation has changed. Me personally had changed. So thinking that we're done, that we learned something once and we never have to learn it again, isn't always the case.
Yeah, we are all a work in progress, and we
Yes.
all need reminders. Teaching the complaint-free challenge is a 21-day challenge. People put on this bracelet and you go through your day. If you catch yourself complaining, you switch it to the other wrist, right? And the idea is to go 21 days consecutively. So it takes people 4 to 6 months to do this challenge. And the thing is even once you finish the challenge, it's not that you're complaint free the rest of your life, right? Even myself, I teach it. I still have to throw the bracelet on every now and then, be like, poof, I'm going down the hill again with complaining. Like I catch myself like, boy, and it's so contagious that I throw the bracelet back on. I have to get back on that horse and remind myself not to complain. And it's human nature. So we need those reminders.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to finish out the show with a discussion on from sharing to shining and taking the stage. This is Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any of the information during the last segments, go to getrootedradio.com to listen to the replay. Don't forget to subscribe, sign up for tips and special events and pricing for upcoming coaching sessions at getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Wendy Babcock. Wendy, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Erica.
Tell listeners one last time about your events that are coming up and how they can reach out to you and maybe learn more about this complaint-free world challenge.
All right. So When Stories, the next one is March 28th with Erica Gifford Mills will be on the stage. March 28th, you can get a virtual ticket for that at onestories.com. Warrior Amplified is a women's entrepreneur and business conference, and that's at warriorunchained.com. And then the Complaint Free Challenge, you can actually visit willbowen.com. Or acomplaintfreeworld.org, and you can learn more about the complaint-free message there.
Wonderful. I probably need to do that because sometimes I find myself complaining. I keep telling, nope, what's a positive spin on this? But, it happens. So during the last few segments, we discussed the why behind the win stories, crafting your story, and storytelling strategies for stages and beyond. And during this last segment, I want listeners to really hear how they can shine and take the stage. So we're going to talk from sharing to shining, taking the stage. So how can listeners get started in sharing their stories more effectively?
Well, it's crafting, learning how to craft the story, of course. And just a tip too, I use 3 core stories. So this is a way to like micro build your storytelling skills and in your talks. So the three core stories are your origin story. And this is just telling about how you got to where you're at now. It could be your why or your when. So that's your origin story. There's your testimonial story. This is how you've helped people. What have you put out into the world already, right? So this is a great example. So you're not bragging. You're just saying, hey, somebody just like you that I worked with, we're struggling with the same problem. And here's how we work together to solve that problem. So it's a testimonial story. And then there is the visionary story. Take people on the journey. Let them see the bigger picture, whether it's where you're going in your business or maybe you see something bigger for them, like if they're lacking confidence. Well, you have them imagine what it might look like in the future. So by telling these kind of three core stories, it makes it a lot easier to start storytelling and speaking. And then you can kind of put those together when you craft your talk. All three of those belong in a talk. So when you start with those three core stories, then you can build a full story.
I like that. And I love it because we do all have an origin story, right?
Right.
Yep. How did this start? Why, when, all that. So now we've got that crafted, right? We have our story that we're going to share. What should a speaker have? What are some of the key speaker assets that help storytellers shine on stage?
Yep. So there's quite a few things actually here. So, if we're kind of building a roadmap to what they need is you do need a website. Doesn't have to be comprehensive, but even a landing page will do. You need to have that. You need to have a contract. You need to protect yourself, and it makes you look more professional. Invoicing system. You have to be able to charge, especially if you're getting for the paid stages, especially, you need an invoicing system to charge. You need speaker assets like a speaker reel. So that's footage of you on a stage. If you don't have that, those are ways that you can get that. One Stories is a great platform for that. So speaker reel, professional photography of you on stage. Now, I say professionally very loosely. There's times when my husband has come with me to speaking engagement and he just snaps photos with his phone. So it's just visual proof, social proof that you're doing the thing that you're telling people you can do. You need testimonials. So anyone who's heard you speak, try and gather testimonials. And a quick tip is gather those right when you get off stage. So if you give a presentation and you have your phone on you and someone's saying, oh my gosh, Erica, that was such a great talk. Be like, great. Can I just quick get a testimonial? Just say who you are, what you loved, and would you recommend hiring me? And literally hold your phone smiling and let them just pour out how much they loved your talk. So testimonials are really important. It's social proof.
Is great. I never even thought of that because when you do, but that's an aha moment. It makes so much sense, right?
Right.
And these are the little things where you don't think about until someone says it. And I think how many times I'm like, I loved it when you did this. It also helps. I feel like not only for that testimonial, but what did the people connect with? Right. So you can maybe you weren't sure that you having that part of the story in was going to be beneficial. And to hear if it was or wasn't, I mean, you can go back to those testimonials and really hear that. I love that idea. I need to start doing that. See, I'm making notes. I'm going to re-listen to my own podcast. So I'd say, what would be the advice do you have for women who are ready to embrace the visibility through storytelling?
So if you're ready, start reaching out to event planners. Look for those stages where your ideal clients are already in the audience. There's so many events. I don't even know how to put a number on it. There's never a lack of events out there in the world. There are so many events that happen, whether it's for entrepreneurs, corporate, association, leadership, you name it. There's an event for everything out there. You can do a simple Google search, type in, conference for, I would maybe look at associations for myself, leadership association conferences, annual conferences, if I'm looking for paid stages, and start Googling and looking for those places that you can get on stage and start pitching yourself. The best way to do it is just to jump in with both feet and just start, finding where those stages are and networking too.
Yeah.
Asking people, hey, what's the last conferences you've been to? What did you get out of it? Who was in the audience? And then finding those event planners to get on those stages.
Well, and I think that's a big thing maybe I should have rephrased that question as well. I mean, you answered what I definitely want you to answer, but is not for women who think they're ready, because a lot of times you aren't going to think you're ready. You might think you have to do this more.
Right.
Get out there, right? Just don't wait till you're ready, because you may
Right.
not ever be ready. You're going to be afraid the first time you did something, right? And just go out
Yeah.
there. You're going to be nervous. You might not know if this was right. You might not know if it's going to resonate with your audience, but go out there, take that, because it gets easier and easier every single time you do it. And you learn from your audience as much as they learn from you. You see what the engaging parts are, and maybe what didn't go over. And that maybe not always be your story. It could be the stage you're on. Maybe that event wasn't the right event for you, but you're not going to know until you get out there.
And even start small. Think of it as baby steps. Do short form video, create reels. I mean, that counts as speaking. Go live on Facebook, get on TikTok. Just start, talking to an audience. Just start learning how to like off the cuff speak, even if you have like a bulleted list in front of you so you can kind of stay on track, but just start.
Absolutely. Anything else before we close out today's show? Anything else that you believe our listeners should know, should have, should do to get their story out there?
Well, and especially if you're an entrepreneur, I want you to think about speaking and storytelling as marketing, because that's what it is, right? So getting on stage and you're teaching, but that's marketing, especially if you have programs and services that you're selling, it's marketing. So think of it as, getting on a stage in front of that ideal audience and giving an offer, even a lead magnet. It's a great way to find your ideal audience without networking and talking to 100 people to find 2 that have what you want or have what you're selling. So think of it as marketing.
And that's good, because if you're not comfortable doing that, know that if you're not comfortable promoting yourself, is anybody else going to be comfortable doing it?
Yeah.
Right? You have to believe in yourself, because your story does matter, just as the title of our episode says, but more importantly, you matter. And believe in what you have, whatever that is, right? Whatever your niche is, whatever your, quote unquote selling is, believe in it, because there's a reason why you're doing it.
Yep. And you are the expert of you. So
Absolutely.
you are always an expert, always an expert.
Yes. Thank you again, Wendy, for being on the show today. I truly appreciate you coming, and I'm looking forward to next month. Oh my gosh, next month already, when the next installment of When Stories comes out.
Yeah, I can't wait for your story. I think it's going to impact a lot of people and really make, just leave some inspiration. So I'm really excited for it.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank you all for tuning in to Get Rooted Radio. If you missed any part of today's episode or want to listen again, go to getrootedradio.com for the podcast. And don't forget to tune in the first and third Monday of each month at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, and 2 p.m. Pacific, right here on Transformation Talk Radio. And before I sign off, ask yourself if you are living a rooted life. And if the answer is no, set up your free Empower Hour call with me. No charge, no obligations. Go to Get Rooted Radio to find out how I can help you take action now. And if you are ready to live, love, and let go, then my award-winning book and companion workbook, The Rooted Life, Live, Love, Let Go, is for you. Check out the bundle deal at getrootedradio.com under the author section. Also, check out my new collaboration book, Cracking the Rich Code, Volume 16, that has been endorsed by Tony Robbins. Order your copies today. And one last personal message. If you are hurting or need help, please know the world needs you, and it is a better place with you in it. Don't let the hard days win. Reach out for assistance. You can text or call or chat the 988 Suicide Crisis Line. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the cost is free. Again, that's 988, or text HOME, HOME, to 741-741 to reach a trained crisis counselor through the crisis text line. It's a global not-for-profit organization, again, completely free, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Thank you for tuning in. Have an amazing day. Know that you are loved, and I'm looking forward to the next time on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Visit GetRootedRadio.com if you've missed any part of this hit show, and tune in on TransformationTalkRadio.com to live fearlessly in your more and powerfully rooted in your unlimited yes. For more information and to work with Erica directly, visit GetRootedRadio.com. That's GetRootedRadio.com, and get ready to live it up, love it up, and let it go.